It was the night of the new moon. The sky was devoid of the moon's faintest trace, and the entire village was swallowed by darkness as if someone had imprisoned the light itself. The winds had stopped blowing, and the branches of the trees stood eerily still. At the heart of the village stood an old, abandoned mansion, about which people said an ancient secret was buried within its crumbling walls. Even in daylight, villagers avoided going near it, and stepping toward it at night was unthinkable. They believed whoever entered the mansion never returned. But tonight, some were compelled to go. Two men were dragging an unconscious young man toward the mansion. Their clothes were soaked in sweat, and their faces betrayed their fear. One whispered, "Keep your voice down. If we make any noise, the whole village will wake up." The other muttered, trembling, "Yes, but my heart is pounding. If we don't finish the ritual, what will happen?" The first replied grimly, "Then the same as last time. There will be corpses in our homes." They dragged the unconscious man to the broken door of the mansion. As the door creaked open, a gust of stale air escaped from inside, carrying with it the stench of something long dead, making them shiver. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Stop! What are you doing?" Startled, they turned to see a young schoolteacher standing before them. His name was Faraz. He was new to the village and didn't believe in such stories. In his hand was a lantern casting a faint glow around him. "What nonsense is this? What ritual are you talking about?" he demanded sternly. The two men trembled. One replied in a low voice, "We have no choice. If we don't offer this sacrifice, our whole families will be wiped out." Faraz snapped, "Killing others to save your family? What kind of justice is that?" For years, this grim pattern had haunted the village. On every new moon night, someone went missing. Sometimes a farmer guarding his fields, sometimes a shopkeeper returning late, sometimes even a child who wandered outside by mistake. By morning, their families were left wailing, but no trace of them was ever found. The villagers dismissed it as a tragic coincidence. Some believed wild animals were responsible. Others whispered about an evil spirit casting its shadow over the village, but no one truly knew the reality. A group of young men decided that enough was enough. Among them were Faraz, Salim, Asif, and Hamza. They kept watch on several new moon nights, trying to uncover the culprit, but each time someone still disappeared, as though something far more cunning than them was at work. One day, they noticed something unusual. The wealthiest and oldest family in the village, led by Jamal Khan, often displayed suspicious activity on these nights. They saw figures sneaking out from the back of Jamal Khan's house and vanishing into the dark. The next new moon night, the youths split up and kept the house under surveillance. That night, they saw two servants dragging an unconscious man toward the mansion. Faraz and his friends followed them quietly, hiding behind bushes. The scene inside the mansion was horrifying. The unconscious man was laid on the floor, his body doused with red paint, his forehead smeared with black ash, and strange chants echoed in the air. Suddenly, he was shoved into the center of a pitch-dark room. Moments later, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence, raising goosebumps on everyone's skin. And then there was an eerie stillness. Faraz immediately informed the inspector, and by the next new moon, a trap was set. Both the police and the youths lay in wait. As soon as Jamal Khan's men came out with their next victim, they were caught red-handed. The inspector roared, "Speak! What is all this? What kind of ritual is this?" Shaking with fear, Jamal Khan confessed, "This mansion was built by our ancestors. It was never just a house. It's a prison. For a shadow. That shadow demands a life every new moon. If we don't give it one, it will break free from its prison and destroy the entire village." Everyone's heart sank as the dreadful truth was revealed. The so-called Pact of Darkness was no mere superstition, it was real. Faraz made up his mind that this had to end, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. The walls of the mansion seemed to warn of an approaching storm. The Pact of Darkness was about to be broken. The inspector stood face to face with Jamal Khan, whose trembling hands betrayed his fear and exhaustion. The villagers had crowded outside the station, shouting in fury, "The murderers of our children! Punish them right now!" The inspector raised his voice, silencing them. "First, the truth will come out," he said firmly. Jamal Khan began to speak in a low, heavy voice. This didn't start today. Centuries ago, the founder of our family was a powerful landlord who wanted the entire village under his control. He summoned a sorcerer, a master of dark rituals, and begged for his help. The sorcerer said, "If you build a dungeon beneath your mansion, and, on every new moon night, sacrifice a human inside it, your family's power will never fade. Your fields will stay green, your wealth will grow, and your influence will remain unbroken." The inspector's face darkened with anger. "So your ancestors sacrificed the villagers for their own prosperity?" Jamal Khan's voice shook. That's a lie," Faraz cut in sharply. "That's a lie. No one's prosperity can be built on innocent blood." Jamal Khan looked straight at him. "You're naive. You never saw the nights when no sacrifice was made. Death danced in our homes. Women dropped lifeless for no reason. Children burned with fever and writhed until they died. Those who survived lost their sanity. That was the hunger of the shadow locked in the dungeon. The shadow is still trapped, but if it isn't appeased, it will devour the entire village." The villagers exchanged frightened glances. Faraz stepped forward. "I don't believe it. Even if such a shadow exists, it can be destroyed. You and your family have slaughtered innocents for generations and called it a tradition. This ends tonight." The inspector immediately ordered Jamal Khan and his men to be arrested. But that very night, something happened that shook them all. Jamal Khan and his servants were locked in the jail. Past midnight, a bone-chilling scream echoed from the cell. Guards rushed inside to find Jamal Khan convulsing on the floor, blood streaming from his eyes. He tried to speak but died before uttering a word. The other prisoners swore they had seen a black shadow emerge on the wall of the cell, stretching like smoke, gripping Jamal Khan's body and pulling him in. Sweat ran down the inspector's face as he filed his report, dread gnawing at his heart. By morning, the news spread everywhere. "See? The shadow is breaking free. Who knows whose turn is next?" whispered the villagers. Faraz gathered the young men. "We must uncover the truth. This cannot all be superstition. There has to be something hidden in that mansion." Asif spoke in a trembling voice. "Outer. But Faraz, what happened in the jail last night? We all saw it." Faraz's expression hardened. "I won't let fear cloud my judgment. Tonight, we're going into the mansion." That evening, new moon darkness once again blanketed the village. Faraz, Asif, Salim, and Hamza armed themselves with lanterns and blades and headed toward the mansion. As they reached the gate, a cold gust of wind swept over them, as though the house itself was welcoming them inside. The rotting wooden floor creaked beneath their feet. Faded portraits lined the walls, their painted eyes gleaming eerily in the lantern light. Salim whispered, "Severity. This place feels alive." Suddenly, a soft, chilling laugh drifted from one corner of the hall, freezing their blood. Faraz raised the lantern higher and saw a black shadow slithering along the wall. It was vaguely human in shape, but its eyes glowed like burning embers. The shadow's attack. Faraz raised the lantern high. As its glow spread across the room, the crawling shadow suddenly stood before them. It looked neither fully human nor fully beast. Its long fingers, tipped with razor-sharp claws, scraped against the floor with a chilling screech. Asif stumbled back, trembling. This isn't human." The shadow moved slowly toward them. As soon as the lantern's light fell on it, it roared in anger, leapt onto the walls, and vanished into the darkness. Hamza's breath quickened. "It fears the light." Faraz took a deep breath. "Yes, but the truth is, we're trapped in its lair." The old chamber. They moved deeper into the mansion until they reached a vast chamber. In the center stood a heavy stone table stained with dark, dried blood. Salim whispered in a trembling voice, This is where the sacrifices were made." On the wall, carved into the stone, were ominous words. Faraz stepped closer to read, "Without blood, the shadow grows thirsty. Without thirst, the shadow grows wrathful. And when it grows wrathful, it devours all." Their faces turned pale as the meaning sank in. The shadow returns. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The lantern went out on its own. A cold wind swept through the chamber as a dreadful, echoing laugh filled the air. The shadow reappeared, larger and more menacing than before. Its eyes glowed a furious red. It leaned over the stone table, clawing deep gouges into the wood with its talons. Asif screamed, "It's trying to break free!" Faraz mustered his courage, struck the lantern alight again, and the shadow shuddered, retreating back into the wall. But as it faded, it left behind a chilling whisper. "The next sacrifice will be one of you." Terror in the village. By morning, as they stepped out of the mansion, the villagers surrounded them in panic. Fear had spread like wildfire. Some claimed their kitchen pots had shattered on their own. Others found bloody handprints smeared across their doors. Old women wept bitterly. "It's after us now. It's in our homes." The inspector tried to calm the crowd, though his own eyes betrayed fear. Pulling Faraz aside, he said grimly, "If we don't end this curse, the entire village will be lost. We must seal that dungeon forever." The village imam revealed that there was an ancient book in the mosque's library that might hold answers about the pact. Faraz and Asif retrieved the dusty, crumbling book. Inside, they found a faded chapter that read, "The pact of darkness can be broken only when light is offered in place of blood. Not the light of flame, but the light that burns within. The light of faith and truth." Faraz closed the book and said with resolve, "This means we must not bow to fear. We will defeat the shadow with courage, not sacrifice." The new sacrifice. That very night, a body was discovered in the heart of the village. It was Asif's close friend. Deep claw marks scarred his flesh, and across his chest, written in his own blood, were the words, "Now it's your turn." The village was thrown into chaos. People rushed to Faraz's home in desperation. "Save us! You're the only one who can stop this." Faraz gathered them all and declared, "Tomorrow night we face it together. This is no longer my battle alone. It's the fight of the entire village." The preparation. The young men armed themselves with blazing torches. The imam recited verses of protection over them, and the women hid their children safely indoors. Faraz looked up at the starless sky and said, "If we fail, this shadow will haunt our bloodline forever. But if we succeed, tonight will mark the end of the Pact of Darkness." It was the night of the new moon, and not a single star was visible in the sky. The young men of the village stood at the mansion's gate holding torches, their faces pale but determined. The imam recited verses from the Quran aloud, his voice echoing in the heavy silence. Faraz raised his hand to signal the group. "Remember," he warned, "this shadow will try to break us by showing our deepest fears. But if we stay together, it can never win." The old gate creaked open slowly, releasing a foul, damp stench that made them cover their noses. Inside, the walls were stained with ancient blood, and rusty chains dangled like lifeless snakes. As they stepped further into the hall, a chorus of voices erupted. Some laughed hysterically, some cried in pain, and others shrieked like lost children. Asif pressed his palms over his ears. "These voices, they're feeding on our fear." Faraz lifted his torch high and shouted into the darkness, "Show yourself! We are not here to run." In an instant, the torches flickered and went out, drowning the hall in pitch blackness. Only the imam's recitation of the Quran continued, glowing like a thread of light in the void. Suddenly, the wall cracked apart and the shadow emerged, but it was no longer a mere swirl of black mist. It had taken the form of a monstrous creature, its body long and twisted, its face hollow where eyes should have been, and from its mouth jutted jagged, rusted iron. The creature roared furiously. "You dared to break the pact?" The ground trembled beneath their feet, and stones fell from the ceiling. People panicked and ran for the exit, but the heavy doors slammed shut by themselves. The shadow moved from one villager to another, whispering their worst nightmares into their ears. One saw the corpse of his child. Another saw his father's body decaying. A third watched his house burn to ashes. Terrified, many collapsed to their knees. Asif cried out, "It's using our weaknesses against us. Don't believe it." Faraz turned to the imam. "Only your prayers and our courage can stop this thing." The shadow struck the ancient stone altar with its clawed hand. Red flames burst out and a heavy iron chain rose from the ground, lashing around Asif's legs and dragging him toward the altar. Asif screamed. It's pulling me in! Faraz grabbed the burning chain with bare hands, his skin blistering but refusing to let go. No one among us will be a sacrifice, he shouted. The Imam called for everyone to recite Surah al-Falaq and Surah al-Nas together. As their voices joined in unison, the room began to glow with a radiant light that spread like dawn. The shadow shrieked, "Stop!" It writhed under the sacred verses. The red glow faded from its eyes, and its twisted form began to dissolve into a smoky mist. Just before vanishing completely, it thundered in a voice that shook the walls. This isn't over. As long as there is darkness, I will return. With a deafening crash, the creature disappeared. The mansion's walls cracked and the roof began to collapse. Everyone ran outside just in time to escape the morning light. At dawn, the village bathed in sunlight brighter than anyone could remember. The blood-stained marks that had haunted their homes were gone, and the centuries-old fear in their hearts began to lift. Faraz's hands were wounded, but his eyes carried peace. The Imam placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "The pact of the shadows has been broken today. But remember, if we ever falter in faith, it may return." The villagers looked at one another and, for the first time in years, smiled. Peace had finally returned to their land.